Hi, welcome to Ketobiography. I'm your host, Robin Dobbins. Today's guest is a retired police officer whose journey from law enforcement to health advocacy has inspired many. After his service, he faced serious health challenges. Through the use of ketogenic and carnivore diets, he transformed his life and restored wellness. Motivated by his personal recovery, he became a licensed sports nutritionist and personal trainer, channeling his expertise into helping others, particularly first responders. He founded Keto Five-O and the nonprofit Cops and Campers, advocating informed nutrition, resilience, and community support. He travels the country with his family, sharing his story and offering practical guidance so others can reclaim their health and purpose. His mission is to show that it's never too late to fight back, heal, and thrive. Let's welcome Eric Reynolds to Ketobiography. Hello and welcome, Eric. It's so good to have you.
Hey, thanks for having me, Robin. I got to make sure I give you one of these cool coins that everyone's talking about at all the
Oh,
keto
right
events.
on. That would be my first challenge coin. So I would
right.
love that.
Well, I want to say thank you. I started that coin giving them out almost as 20-pound weight loss certificates or a token of appreciation to the people I was helping. Like, hey, man, you did it. You made the 20 pounds, which, as we know, on keto carnivore doesn't take long. So I started dishing out coins a lot faster than I anticipated. But that was a great thing. So, then it just turned into, the other side has the Cops and Campers logo on it. So I give those out to cops and, anybody that's looking for metabolic health. It's kind of a cool piece to talk about, so.
Yeah, I agree. And what a fitting thing for you to do is to hand out challenge coins to people. So, what we do here on Ketobiography is I really just love to hear you tell your story the way you want to tell it. So, I'm just going to turn it over to you and let you go. I know you have a lot of exciting stuff to share. So
yeah, I got to get through
it.
the early stuff. I guess I'm Eric Reynolds. I'm 55 years old. I was born in Key West, Florida. I grew up in Miami, Florida. So that's pretty much my early years. My mom was a police officer in Dade County in Miami. She did 30 years. She was a homicide sergeant. So I was that classic cops kid, but my mom was the cop, not my dad. So there's a little different spin on things, different take on things, and anyways, during those years, I played a lot of sports. My mom was divorced pretty young. My dad was in another state. So I kind of became a product of the system I was involved in, like after school programs that my mom put me in for YMCA or sports or, and I guess by around 12 years old is when my diet I really look back on really kind of changed in about the 80s, when they brought the high fructose corn syrup in, and that's when I was growing. That's when I felt my body, and I was putting on, every year I would go up and wait for football, and I was getting a belly, and I didn't, looking back, my mom was hustling, trying to do the best she could, but she didn't know all that healthy stuff that they were telling her was actually the best thing for me at that time. It should have just been steak and eggs the whole time. So, over the years, I was a football player body type, probably like 30, 40 pounds, heavier, but it was muscle and fat, combinations. And it kind of progressed through college, and, those eating habits stayed. And I stopped playing football. So then obviously your body's changed, you stop growing, and I started growing, sideways. And I bounced up. I graduated high school about 190 pounds. By the time I graduated college, I was about 210. And then I started the police academy about 6-7 years later after catching shoplifters for a while. That's a whole nother show. And I was about 200, and I think the academy weighs 217 pounds. And I was one of the better, more fit guys in my academy. I'm 6 foot tall. Right now, I'm about 172, rocking and rolling. But at that time, I thought I was rocking and rolling, but I was more like rolling. And so anyways, you go through the academy, and, it's nice to be physically fit and strong. And I stayed active all through those years. And, I loved the job. It was a very honorable job. And, there's a lot of sacrifices along the way, a lot of relationships, not a lot, but, you try, it's hard, shift work and trying to maintain relationships, and your diet suffers, the stress of the job and the trauma that you put in over those years, builds. And I didn't really know nutrition. I knew how to write search warrants. I knew how to write, all kinds of important details that could technically get me arrested in court if I didn't do it right. But I didn't know how to read my blood work. I didn't know any of that stuff, right? and never thought about it. And then about, I guess about 2012, I became a new dad. You know, I met my wife of 18 years at the time. And, you know, we're living a happy life, keeping her at home, which was a big decision. You know, we had thought we'd do daycare for 6 months, and man, she was breastfeeding from the get-go, and she was like, no way am I giving this baby up. So I'm like, all right, I guess I'll work details and try to make ends meet. And June 12th, 2012 is when I got in a car chase with a bank robber from another city. And he ended up crashing, and he opened his door, and we exchanged gunfire, another officer and I, and the bad guy. And I got shot through the foot and ricocheted through one off my leg, and we ended up killing the suspect at the scene. So I go to the hospital, and I'm going home that night, spending that night with my family. So it was actually nice. I was able to at least make it home. And that weekend was my first Father's Day. So I'm holding my 5-month-old son, and it's really, you know, you're like, oh, this is pretty a big moment, you know. And I hadn't understood where I was going to go with this whole path of that, right? But meanwhile, you know, I'm still trying to calm myself down. You know, my central nervous system's all out of whack. My diet was probably heavy carbs, so I know I'm totally inflamed now. You know, probably about 225, 230 pounds. You know, that's not one bad 10 pounds considering most cops, you know, put on so much weight by the end of their career. I thought only 10 pounds was pretty good. So anyways, you know, trying to deal with the stress of what happened. I was off the road for about 3 months until I came back. You know, and you start to build a bond with your family, you know, and then you go back out there and it's like, oh, I'm back in the hunt. I don't like this anymore. This game isn't fun, right? It's really dangerous, even though I knew that, but you know, it made it, you know, real. So then I was like, man, how much longer do I got? You know, I was thinking about these different avenues and ways to go. And there was an evidence job that popped up about 6 months later. And I was having a hard time back on the road. Nobody really knew it at the time, but I was just really stressed out. Trying to battle what was going on and, you know, how to handle it. You know, I didn't know about nutrition. I didn't know about, you know, yoga or getting outside and vitamin D and talking about it. I didn't know any of that stuff. So I'm trying to handle it myself in our macho world. And, you know, what's the one thing that's accepted in our profession is alcohol. So I start drinking a little more than I used to, you know, those house pours. You know, you think you're doing an ounce or two, and next thing you know, oh, it's a little too much. You know, I'll take care of that, though. Don't worry about it. So I started drinking a little more, and, you know, over time, not going out as much. You know, we're not, you know, I don't know this at the time, but, you know, I'm a little bit more hypervigilant all the time, and I'm a lot hypervigilant. And just became this, you know, I surrounded myself just in my house and then at work. House and work, you know, and my diet showed that too. You know, I wasn't working on any farms. I wasn't, you know, studying anything about it. And I started to get a little bigger and bigger. And it's also the stress of the job and the thinking about what had happened and trying to, at the time, I battled workers' comp to seek therapy for the PTSD portion of my shooting. And they actually fought me, even though they had me, you know, on file. I was getting shot in the line of duty. You think that would be, all right, yeah, you get it. But no, I had to fight. A whole lawyer, a room full of lawyers. I called them a bunch of wolves in there. And finally got the help I needed. And that doctor helped me out so much. You know, he's the one that told me how to dance with it and, you know, what's going on with my central nervous system. And then that time I met a guy playing basketball. And over the next 6 months, he'd lost 50 pounds. And I was asking, what's going on, Darren? How'd you lose 50 pounds? You know, what are you doing? And he mentioned this ketogenic way of eating. And I'm like, keto? You know, and I just thought it was some martial arts something, right? I didn't know. It sounded awful to me. And something sounded like something I was going to not enjoy. And I started reading up on it. And I was like, man, you know, I'm 200 at this point. I was like 245 pounds. I was battling 250 pounds, going up and down, thinking I could control it and figure it out myself by cutting back on, you know, the standard foods, cut back on whatever they were telling me. My wife wouldn't let me do the statins. That was, you know, my cholesterol at that point was probably 267, 272 total cholesterol, which now I laugh at. And, but I didn't know that then, right? So, you know, I had another cop buddy die of a heart attack. So then all of a sudden, you're really starting to take a deeper dive in this keto world. And I decided to go for it and really meal prep, start to eating a meal time, like a window. I used to eat between 12 and 5. you know, and I would do coffee with broth. I had read some about bullet coffee and, you know, and all that. And I just made my own, you know, and I put a little stevia in there and I dropped the sugar. I kept the heavy cream, had a little bone broth or collagen or something in there. And I used to hold me till about 12 o'clock. And then, man, 20 pounds the first month. And then 6 months later, I'm down 50 pounds. And I hadn't seen 200 pounds since, man, last century. So, which is crazy to say, right? So I'm like, oh my goodness. And guys notice at your department, you know, and they notice they keep coming up to me. You feeling all right? You sick, Reynolds? You know, because they think usually if someone loses that much weight, you're going out the door. And I was like, no, man, I feel fantastic. And at the time, I got one of those desks where I could stand, and you know, I'm still in evidence at the time. I'm just like hyperactive, like crazy, because you know I'm on ketones all day long, flying around. And my brain was getting better. I was getting just a little bit more. The fog was leaving. I was getting a little bit more at ease, like my restlessness and some of my, you know, I know what's going on now, but at the time I couldn't figure out that my inflammation was changing, not just in my belly and my gut and everything. It was also helping my brain. And my wife and I had decided, hey, you know, I can retire at 50 years old. And that's 6 months away. I go, why don't we just retire? And she's like, yes, I've been trying to like get you to sell our house and buy a tiny house. And I'm like, whoa, slow your roll, lady. You know, I'm just trying to retire first. A little we know what happens in freaking 5 years later where I'm living. And so then we decided to retire. And at the time, I'm talking to cops. I'm like, hey, man, lay off that Dr. Pepper, man. At least let's start you off. So let's get you on the Diet Dr. Pepper. And then let's get you on the club soda or the sparkling water. And then slowly, let's, you know, guys will want to give up their booze. That was a big thing. I'm like, all right, you can keep the booze. Because honestly, I kept alcohol the whole time until 2 years ago when I sobered myself up. Just, you know, I quit. And I kept vodka on standby all the time. That was my crutch. It was clean. I lost weight while I drank. And, you know, I was willing to go play basketball, work out, eliminate the carbs, but I needed that vodka to calm my ass down, right? Sorry about that. And I just had to calm myself down. I didn't know other ways at this point. I mean, I'm still 2019. I'm about to turn 50, and I don't, you know, I'm still trying to figure out what I'm doing. You know, helping a couple cops lose weight, and then it goes into dispatch and records, and next, you know, the sheriff's office. There's a couple of cops that work for us that are over there, start asking me questions, and I'm like, I got to do a group. I got to do something. There's too many text messages going on there. I got my wife and kids, and you know, I end up having another boy over those times. So I had 2 boys, and so I started a little Facebook group. You know, it was Keto Five-O. And then it was just, you know, I retired. You know, there's some bigger story, which is another show. That summer, I found a brother through 23andMe that was a cop in Orlando, 2 hours away. And sorry.
You're allowed to take a breath. It's fine.
No, I know.
But I'm going to interject right now.
Yeah.
We talked
Okay,
about this beforehand. That you do tell an extensive story in 2 parts on another podcast called Game of Crime. So he has brushed over so much detail in this very quick, breathless rendition of this story. But if you want to know more, I highly recommend those 2 episodes on Game of Crimes because he gets into the detail of all of the specifics of this. But I know you're going to touch on it more as you go along. But I wanted to take that break and just interject that right there. Go ahead.
Yeah, so, you know, I found a brother that my dad had back in 1960s. Didn't know about it, but this guy had been in the RV camping the last 10 years. Well, that's right down my path of what my wife wanted to do. So we end up camping together, and he pretty much convinces me, yeah, this is the life where you should try it out. You're retiring. And so we sold our house, and then we bought a camper, you know, and in the beginning of I think it was July 2020, we finally were allowed to escape, you know, because all the sanctions had kicked in because of COVID. And our trailer had got shut down on the factory line. So we were kind of just waiting around to hit this new life, right? So, but yeah, I skipped over a whole bunch of stuff with Dave, but he was like my little guardian angel. And you know, he showed up and it kind of got us in the path that we wanted to go. And we're already homeschooling at this point. We weren't a homeschooling family, but we realized for us to control and be involved in not only what they're learning, but what they're eating, because I became really big in what my kids were eating over this time, because I'm healing myself. And I'm actually, hey, what are we feeding our kids, right? What am I feeding my dog? You know, and I became this freaking like Keto Fido and Keto Five-O guy all at once, right? I want to say cats, I want to say dogs, I want to say people. And it was pretty cool because I'm reading the ingredients to people. I go, this is poison. This is the same stuff that got me sick, just a different form, So I kind of, anyways, we get the trail and we start hitting the road. And over that time, I'd met Doug Reynolds and done his Low Carb USA podcast because I'd met somebody else and somehow I met Doug. And he goes, come on my show and do it. I go, man, I've done podcasts about law enforcement, so I've never done one about nutrition because I'm not, your standard. I went, through all my biology and, in high school, and that was my path. It was never my path, and so I went on a show, and then he goes, hey, you should really turn this into something, and because you're already helping first responders and coaching, and once you get, a certificate or a license or something. So he got me in touch with Jeff Cotterman at the National Association of Sports Nutrition out there in San Diego, and I was able to go to school online all during COVID as we traveled, as long as the Wi-Fi was close enough, or a library was. And I was able to get my sports nutritionist license and my health advocate and my personal trainer and my resistance training. And I really dove into like, wow, this is what I'm going to be, like Mr. Fitness Man on TV, rah, rah, rah. And I didn't want that life, but it was just kind of feeling like, wow, I'm really taking this new life on. And, copyrighted Keto Five-O, so don't get any ideas out there. And started just really embracing this. Wow, how do I charge people? And it's hard for me I talk to people like they're my buddies and friends. I tell them, and it's, when I start helping people, it's hard for me to come back and be like, hey man, I need to write you a bill, or I need you. And I just wasn't, that wasn't me. So I'm like, maybe you buy some t-shirts or something. So you start, or help me out, buy me a steak at lunch or something like that. So you start helping these people. And, in 2021, we end up in New York, and there was a little incident, which is something else I'm going to fly over. But there was a campground that had asked me to leave because of my police flag, and another PTSD incident popped up. Nobody got hurt, but I lost my cool and ended up getting suspended from 1,000 trails for 2 months. But then these 4 different campgrounds invited us to come, and we spent the whole summer in like Cape Vincent, New York, and all along, Ithaca, and it was just amazing. Over that time, I met other cops, other retired veterans, other retired people in general, and guess what? They're all metabolically sick. They're all on medications. They're all diets are crap, right? And I'm always like, well, let me do a Keto 5 search warrant on your RV. And they're like, no. I'm like, why? Because they know I'm going to find the cereals, the donuts, the cookies, all the crap, right? But I would just start talking to people and trying to help them and guide them, to all of our heroes, right? The Berries, the, Sean Baker's. And I always try to get them to read like Nina Teicholz's book, Big Fat Surprise, and of course Saladino's book because of the history of the carnivore diet and some of that information, and oxalates, and then Sally Norton, and you know what I'm saying? You start going down this road. So, and then I can't wait to tell people, hey, you gotta, And meanwhile, my kids they're ketovore kids. They have berries and strawberries. Everything's pretty much, we try to control where we get the food from. My youngest son has Lyme disease, so we always have to manage his inflammation. And I ended up having Lyme, find out 3 years later when I was going through my own, high tax score of 5,600. I was going through a whole bunch of tests with Dr. Bavadia. And he was like, man, we should get you freaking whole bunch of panels done on you, from the heavy metals to the mycotoxins. So, but we'll get into that in a second. So anyways, we're traveling around. I'm starting to help cops. And I decided to start something called Cops and Campers, which is like a retreat program. We go to different campgrounds and we get first responders again. It could be a veteran, it could be a nurse, and a teacher. It's just kind of had to start from somewhere. I'm a cop camping, and that's what started my whole problem at the campground was, being a cop. So I start to just organize a couple events, and we get people pulling up, and obviously we're barbecuing, we're talking health. One of the things I did forget to mention in 2019, when I lost the 50 pounds and then I retired, I did go full carnivore, and I lost another 25. So when you start talking to people and they're like, oh, you're too young to be retired, I go, no, I'm actually 50 or 51, whatever age I am at the time. And they can't believe it. I grew my hair out, I'm not that bald head cop anymore, and I could have grew hair. I mean, if I knew I could have done this when I was 16, I would have joined a band, probably never played football, never been a cop. But I love it. My kids are killing me in the hair length, but they love it. So it's been fun. It's a different, I tell my wife, you got a new husband, kick the old fat guy to the curb. You got this, thin, strong, and sometimes a little bit volatile, which I'm working on every day, but anyway, so the Cops and Campers stuff grew, and then we turned it into a nonprofit. and I've had 9 events. Dr. Kiltz has been the 2 of them to speak to some of my cops and firemen that are there. I've had other authors that have written books to come, like Kevin Donaldson talked about his story of being a cop. So it's always a little bit of trauma and nutrition kind of, that's my pot, right, that I'm kind of cooking. And I want eventually to get guys like, Dr. Tro to get there. And, I want people to have different doctors that for maybe, which we already have, but I'd like them to talk to them too, not just, hey, here's a guy's card or follow this guy's YouTube channel, and it's making a difference. When some of my cop buddies saw Dr. Kiltz and they're like, well, what about probiotics? And he's like, poison, he's just, how he is. It's freaking awesome. And this is how you talk to my guys, right? And gals, it's everybody. So it's just been so much fun, and it's turned into my job now. I'm working on trying to collect donations. I'm trying to get next year's speakers, and I'm trying to network to bring my crew of people to like Hack Your Health, get some sergeants and some bosses there in the training units there to understand how important the nutrition is. Because what you're going to do is you're going to have a healthier workforce. You're going to have less complaints because you're going to have less cops that are hangry and that are out of shape and probably suffering some type of trauma that they haven't, resolved or even managed at all yet. One of the first things that they can do on their own is to control what they're eating, is to stay away from the high carbs, because that's going to inflame your body. It's going to make you hungry all the time. I tried a couple of my clients that are cops on, shift work. I have them fast. They can do the coffee broth thing. They're on night patrol and they're freaking ready. They hit the gym first. They start hitting that coffee all night. And then they go for steak and eggs in the morning after they're done with their shift, man. These guys are rocking and rolling, man. It's awesome, and everyone's a little different. You have families that you got to deal with, that are part of these cop families. You fix the cop. Sometimes you can't fix the family, or you got to, it becomes a bigger project. One of the things I keep telling people, I go, what you got to do? You got to let me come live with you for 2 weeks and let me run the show. And then I'll set you straight. Because in the end, it's going to be you making a decision. You're going to be the one driving down the road, looking at Wendy's or smelling the Burger King that they funnel up there in the air. And once you understand how poisonous and how toxic that is, and once you work hard to get to a certain point, you can't go back. I tried, man. I've tried to go back and eat some of that stuff just looking at it, and I can't do it. It's like I'm pulling out of the drive-thru. I can't do it. I'm just fast. So we're going to get to where I'm getting. So, yeah, that's pretty much what I've crazily been doing. I started doing more podcasts. I joined a couple other first responders that started a podcast. It's called Undercover Dumpster Fire. And one of the major points is trauma. And one guy's a fireman, one guy's a cop, and I'm the other cop, but they're both actors. So that's the weird part. They're not acting cops and firemen. They were real firemen and a real cop. They retired and got into this whole acting gig. So they're in Marathon, Florida. I'm going down this week or next weekend to meet up with those guys and do a couple of things. But they want me to be part of the nutrition part of this program that we're running. So they got the therapy and the meditation and yoga, and you got me coming in, and bringing in some of the nutrition value. And hopefully I can bring more guests in or more, professionals that can help guys with certain needs. Cops and campers, one of the things we do is we have yoga in the morning. We have, obviously Dr. Kiltz is speaking. We have a band on Saturday night that plays. I have giveaways, masa chips and Paleo Valley and, all our friends, donate. And, I'm trying to get all of our people onto the good stuff, at least a bridge, to get off that toxic world and, into this new world and understand that, I don't know if people know, but over half the cops when they retire die within 5 years.
Wow. I did not know that. Yeah.
Well, it's not only heart attacks, it's suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And we lose more cops every year to suicide than we do any other thing, and firemen too, and it's really out of control. You never see any of these guys trying to look at the nutrition side to help these guys with some of their addictions. We're addicted to food also, it's not just alcohol. And these bad habits we've developed, and then not being able to reach out within our departments, there's a breakdown there. And it's gotten worse. That's what's going to happen. And I get feedback all the time. I get guys calling me all the time. And it's hard. You know, and there's, in case anyone's listening, there's cop line out there. In case anyone's feeling depressed or you need someone to talk to, there's a whole bunch of guys bigger and badder than me that'll help you out. Okay, I'm good now, Robin. Sorry.
Take a breath. It's okay. You're trying to fit a lot into a small amount of time, and it's definitely emotional.
Now it's been lately that topic's been hitting me, man. You know, and I'm like, wow, my boys are getting older and they start asking me questions. Dad, I go, oh, I don't want you to be a cop, son. Oh no. Here I am, the son of a cop. It's kind of funny.
Yeah. Well, it should be emotional. It's a major part of your life, and you care about these people. You didn't get into being a cop because you don't like people. I'm sure you got into cop because you wanted to serve people. And so while you're retired from that life, you're still serving people, the greater community, plus focusing on the public servants that you deeply care about. So it's totally reasonable.
All those like what is it, healing humanity, I cry and all that stuff, man. It doesn't have to be a cop story. It's like, it's been so touching. I mean, obviously getting out of my cop world to get into this other world and meeting so many, and we call you civilians, yeah, but you're a citizen just like I am. You have real problems, you have your own battles that brought you to this event that we're hanging out at talking, right? And that's what I've embraced. It's been really awesome. And I meet a lot of people that didn't maybe understand a cop's life, and I try to hear other people's perspective on their interactions with police officers, because I know most of the time it's not always a good thing, because if we show up, there's usually a problem, or it's all right, here we are, the party's over, or it's a tragedy or something horrible, so I did do a calendar, which I am going to do a reel on. I did a calendar back in 2008, a police calendar with some of my other cop buddies, and they don't know I got a copy of it. So I'm putting together something special, because half the guys I think got indicted or fired. So I got to make sure I'm not going to get sued. But I was like 215 pounds in this calendar. I was Mr. November, and I'm like, oh no, I could have been so much, but that was all planned, pretty much trying to do the plant stuff then, right?
You need to do a Keto Five-O calendar, and you can be Mr. November again with your old Mr. November in the corner, so there's a comparison. But then maybe some of the people that you work with, or some of the cops and campers folks, can join in, and you can do that.
I can do maybe one for before and afters, and that'll help motivate some guys. That's a good idea. So
yeah. That's another giveaway at one of your events, your cops and campers calendar. I think that'll be, yeah. See,
I know.
The wheels are spinning. So I would like to talk to you a little bit more. I'm sure you're not done. I know you have a lot to say, and then I love that. So it's good. So go wherever you want to go. But I do want to ask you more about the health piece of being a police officer. And I know that you personally have had issues because of all of that stress that builds up over time. It's certainly not something that people talk about very often, but you're living in this constant stress, adrenaline cycle, and then suddenly you're out. So that takes a toll on the body. So can you talk about that a little more?
Yeah, I mean, it's a made up profession by humans. It wasn't, the hunt and you get that adrenaline dump. That's more of a natural, that's how we've been doing things, but the repeatedly over and over again to go through something that's going to raise your freaking, cortisol levels and your adrenaline dump. And you got to understand, every time that radio goes off and we're listening, we're waiting for, I hate to say it, the OS call, as we call it, and the alert tones, you stop what you're doing because something's bad coming on the other end, and you don't know. It could be everything, a baby not breathing, to a car accident, to another cop's not responding. I mean, there's so many things. And when you take that over 30 years of day to day to day, you could almost see how these cops turn into these just grumpy old SOBs, man. It's just, God, they can't take it anymore. They've seen like the worst of society, and we've seen the system break down on times, and we've seen officers make bad decisions at times that make us look bad, so it's just an ugly, nasty cocktail, and I'm glad I got out right under 20 years. I think that saved me, because I was going down, even though I was losing the weight, I happened to get a CAC score done at that point. I know a lot of people, whether you believe in it or not, it was 1,500 then. And my regular doctor, who wasn't believing in the keto at the time, was really freaking out. Called me at my house. This is right when I decided to retire. I'm flying high, And he's like, "Oh my God, I got to get you cardiologist, Eric. This is," he was panicked. I'm like, "Oh my goodness," right? So I found Dr. Barry's thing about something. I was like, "Oh, okay." I'm making mental notes, and I'd already seen Dr. David Diamond's freaking thing about, his presentation about, cholesterol myth and all those guys. I was already mad at pharma, and being a cop in South Florida, we had to go through the opiate crisis. So I was already against modern medicine. I saw what they did down here. Alzheimer's, dementia, I've seen it. I saw their game plan years ago. I just didn't realize it, and I don't know if people know, when there's someone passes away, we are at the scene of the house and we're taking control of it. I have to inventory things like narcotics and some of the pills in the house, either taking a picture and writing it down, taking it, because you don't want the grandkids or neighbors to break in, because Wilma passed away and they know she's got, some type of, Schedule 2 drug or something, or Schedule 1 or something that's prohibited from them having. And I remember writing the names of all those prescriptions. I'm like, this is what killed this guy. I used to say that all the time as I'm sitting there complaining about the hospitals. So I wasn't going to get into the pharma side. And my doctor the cardiologist, is trying to sell me on the statins. He was like, "Oh, since 1990, the heart attack rates went down." And I'm like, "Yeah, but diabetes went up." And he goes, "That's a different conversation." I'm like, "It's the same conversation." Like, I lost all respect for him. I still have it recorded. He doesn't know I did a memo and recorded on my phone. So how do you like them apples, buddy? You'll see that again one day. And he's telling me, just trying to, look how long my white coat is, buddy. That type of stuff. Anyway, he's ego me. And I ended up walking away from modern medicine, and I know that we were talking about the cop diet, which is always fast food and you're on the go, and I need something fast, monster drinks or eating fast. I didn't eat a lot of donuts, but I ate a lot of bagels. Now I understand it's pretty much the same thing, depending on how much cream cheese and all the other fake stuff I put on it.
There's your donut cups and there's your bagel cups, and you're a bagel cup. I got it.
Yeah, and we're both still wide. And yeah, so actually, I think it was about 2 years ago, I was at a conference with Dr. Avadia, and so I heard someone had reduced their calcium score on carnivore. I was like, "Wow, I've been carnivore 5 years. And my last calcium score in 2019 was 1,500. Man, I wonder if my shit went down. I wonder if mine went down, right?" And Dr. Oadi's like, "Yeah, man, let's go get you scanned." So I went and got it scanned. That thing came back 4125 or something like that.
Really? I hear that often, but nobody ever I hear where doctors talk about they are starting to see it, but I've never really talked to anybody who's had that happen. So I'm glad that you mentioned that.
Oh, this is wild, because all of a sudden it was 4135. And I'm like, what? It tripled? And we don't really know if it went up every year, or did I have massive healing and calcification right when, over that time from the last scan. So there's a lot of unknowns. So he goes, let's go ahead and do some more testing. And I got tested for the heavy metals. And I also got tested for the mycotoxins. And that's when I found out about, let's see, all right, I had the Lyme disease, I already told you. It turns out I had mercury, arsenic, and aluminum, which I figure is pretty standard. I use deodorant, they're spraying all over the place, and who knows what the vaccines I got when I was a little baby in the Air Force, and they're sticking everything new into me then, and everything else through school. That's a fun topic. So anyways, I'm like, all right, the arsenic, I'm like, oh, my wife trying to kill me. And he, obviously I know that's brown rice and a lot of the processed, all that fast food, that stuff's coming from, bad, rice anyways or something. So the mercury, I was like, what's the mercury from? And I realized I had 6 mercury fillings from like 1982. And I'd heard get them replaced, but I'm a freaking dude. And I don't think about it until they tell you're dying. And you're like, oh man, I should get this looked at. So I ended up having those 6 fillings removed by a biodentist, had the whole contraption, and had some, I think I didn't do the detox right, because I think I got a little mercury poisoning after that. I went through some detox issues and some inflammation, and But anyways, the mycotoxins showed up really high in molds. I had like 8 of them that were crazy high. And I don't know if that's from being in Florida my whole life, wearing the vest that was moldy and polyester. Was I fermenting for 15, 20 years of my career and wearing that uniform? Also, a lot of the food has mold. You know, there's so many ways I could go at it. You know, we know our trailer didn't have mold. So that was the one thing.
Mold is very unavoidable, especially in Florida.
Yeah. So I was like, all right. So we started doing, I didn't do any like detox. I just started eliminating things and say, all right, I'm going to get off nuts. Alcohol was still lingering. So that September, Labor Day, I decided if Florida State beat LSU, which I'm an alumni of Florida State, I quit drinking that week, and they won. And they proceeded to go undefeated the rest of the season until they, you know, got killed in the bowl game when they didn't, whatever. But anyways, I went like 3 months without any booze. Started feeling really good, you know, and that's a biohack, man. You ever want to just really get yourself in a better shape and easy way, just lay off the booze. I mean, I know I laid on, it was a crutch for me. I'm just saying that's an easy one because I all of a sudden that loose skin I started having, my body fat started changing, you know, even I wasn't like guzzling a whole bottle of it, but it was useless. I'm poisoning my body. So anyways, I started looking at that and man, that's not helping. You know, and like I said, my youngest son at the time was 7, was going through some extreme Lyme disease that we didn't know what it was. We thought it was Marfan disease. We didn't know what was going on with my little boy. And we finally went to a naturopathic doctor, and they were like, get him checked for Lyme. Had to go to the hospital, and of course, and they want to prescribe him antibiotics right away. We're like, nah, we don't even know how long he's been battling this for 6 weeks because different doctors don't know what the heck's going on. So we didn't get the antibiotics. We went through the whole protocol that the doctors, you know, gave us, and he's rocking and rolling. He's doing good. I mean, of course, a low inflammation diet's his best friend. It's great that his dad's Keto Five-O, you know, and I'm all about the low inflammation diet. So, yeah, so I'm thinking, all right, year goes by, you know, I'm feeling good. I'm not going to lie, you know, you start getting told about your calcium score. And I'm like, man, I don't feel like I'm blocked. And, you know, they're trying to say maybe I should go and get, you know, little Mr. Camera to go look around. And I know they're going to do stents every time. All right. I already know it. I've seen it happen. Actually, one of my friends died after jogging with stents. So I've already taken a deep dive in stents, and I'm very, you know, I'm not for them at all. So I was like, man, what am I going to do? So next test comes a year later. Let's go get retested again, see if you got any better. Right. You know, I had a couple of inflammation markers were high. My ferritin was high. I had a couple of, let's see, you know, my cholesterol was like at that time 330 or something like that. It wasn't anything crazy. So I go get the next scan, and it comes back 5,600. So now I'm approaching $6,000, Robin. So it's getting crazy here, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay. So then the idiot's like, all right, well, we did. He's like, well, you're asymptomatic. You know, you're not having any, you know, and I'm not running marathons, never was a marathon runner, but I was more of your basketball, short, you know, played football, that type of stuff. I get tired if I run too far. I mean, that's just how I am. But now I'm a little nervous once in a while. I won't push as far as I used to because, you know, it does play in your mind. You can see how powerful that can be, you know, and being a cop, the last thing I want is if you can drop dead in front of my kids. I mean, that's nobody's feet, you know, nobody wants that, but I have seen it. So it hits home. So I'm always like, you got to keep yourself in good shape. You got to watch this and that. So we go get the next test. It's 5,600. All right. The next thing to do is we went through heart flow. And this is when they inject you with the dye with contrast. And they pretty much do another scan. And, you know, they stop, you know, they try to figure out the whole calcium and all this stuff in my flow. So what happened was it comes back. Because one of my arteries, I think it's my RCA one, is almost 4,000. It's like the high one. I don't know. I call it by compost pile. It's like the end of I think that's where they're storing everything. And the worst artery I have on the blockage scheme, I guess, would be is 30% blocked. My Widowmaker is only 25% blocked. And all the other ones are below 20. So the way or actually the other two were 0, whatever it was. So the way I'm looking at it, usually they want to stent you, right? If you're 80, 90, or 70 up. Well, I still got, I'm at 30, so I still all the way up. I got another 40, 50 points the way I'm looking at it until that becomes an issue, because I'm, I'm not having chest pain, knock on wood. I mean, you never know, your time's your time. But I'm, even my regular doctors don't, besides statins, they don't know what else to freaking do with me. What are you going to do with me?
Yeah,
What are you
that's
going to cut me
interesting.
open? You're going to cut me open and just start nosing around? Hey, let's figure out what's going on with this guy. Or did I heal so much that my body's doing what it's naturally doing? And did I also, you ever heard of collateral arteries? Over
So,
time, your
so
body
you made like a
reforms.
new
I,
one.
yeah, like
Well,
I'm some weird science project. Like I got extra arteries.
there's stuff going on in there.
But if I was that sick growing up and it was that active, and I was active all the way, until I retired and got told I had a 1,500 score, and then I started thinking twice about stuff. I pushed it a lot, and I did play 1 year college ball at Valdosta State College, and I was really thinking of and training myself as a college athlete, and yeah, I ended up not going. I went to Florida State, started partying, became number one party school, and so that led to my bad habits and bad choices. But yeah, man, I think back in those days, I really think my body circumvented some of the blockages possibly that were happening, or maybe I was just a freak, or I always. I mean, I don't know what else to do. Like even Dr. Avadi is like, hey, we just maintain it and we'll check your blood work. I mean, I wore CGM to see everything. Nothing was off. It's just massive healing. And I think the mercury poisoning I went through after I had that done, I really thought that caused a lot more inflammation. I think that jacked up the score. So I don't know what I'm going to do anymore. I'm tired
Yeah,
again.
that's an interesting predicament to be in, because they say that they say that they start seeing numbers go down, but with yours going up, it seems like they would be pretty alarmed. I find it interesting that you work with Dr. Avadia, since he does know about all this, like he's on board. So, and that concern level is, first of all, it's up to you. Like you're your own patient advocate, so you get to make this
Right.
decision based on the information that you have. You have flow. Everything's going. You feel great. So you don't feel like you need to intervene in any capacity. That's certainly your decision. And other people might be completely scared to death, but
Oh my!
you well, and I'm not saying that it didn't knock you for a loop when you first found out, I'm sure, but you at least were able to think about it, like what's important to me. Do I want to go on drugs that I know I've seen information on aren't necessarily going to help anything? It might make me worse and have more brain issues, and I'm trying to heal my brain. So it's a rock and a hard place decision. And now you live in this world of no man's land. I'm LMHR, so when we figured that out, it was like, well, you are in a world of no man's land. That
Yeah.
you don't know. We don't know if this is a good thing. We don't know if it's a bad thing. It's just a thing, and we're trying to figure that out. So you're on the figure it out side.
Yeah, I always call myself a lean mass hyper first responder.
There
So
you go.
yeah, I wasn't that scared really when it went up. I was just like, I was just more curious about it. But Facebook has a club for everything, and I'm on a high pack club over there, and I see people flipping out about, oh my God, my score was 40. I'm like, dude, and I'll do like my little. So I did a post I can refer people on that, because I want people to know it's okay. You don't have to lose your mind, dude. Or whoever. And I know people are so far already. A lot of these posts are already on. They got stents. They're already on statins. They're already on the plant diet. Because their doctor told them. And I can see it, and I can't help them all. It's really sad.
Yeah.
But I do put my story out there, and some people are receptive to it, and like, yeah, I was reading something, and I don't be overbearing with it. I just tell my story. This is me. Carnivore 5 years. Yeah, it went up, but you know what? I'm in best shape of my life. I mean, mentally, what it did for me, I wish I had it younger in my life, but head trauma from football and being a cop. I mean, I was primed for some bad stuff probably to happen metabolically in my life, and I was able to fix it by this way, and I was on plant-based my whole life. Come on, get out of here. They're like, oh, you got to go more come on, Salisbury steak with like TV dinners and all that fake mash, but what do you think that was? It was all plant crap. So anyways.
Yeah. Well, you are feeling in the best you've ever felt in life, and then you get a number. And I think that's what gets, it's like it's a number that I wouldn't have known about if nobody would have gone in there. I would have just lived my life and everything would have been fine. And
Another big change that guys should know is my testosterone in 2019, even after keto, of like, I think it was 6 months when I had my last blood done, I was like 389, and they were talking to me about, oh, your testosterone's getting low. Well, now it's 789 without anything. And you can ask my wife, poor lady. She's just running from me all the time. And I tell her, I go, the minute you stop thinking about reproducing as a species, you die. So this diet has helped me stay active and vigorous. And she understands that. She's just like, push me away or whatever. We play the game.
You're alive. Now go away.
Yeah, I know you're alive. Now go outside, leave me alone. So,
go.
It's amazing. It's amazing, man. I see guys at work that they take the blood pressure medicine and then they take the other medicine to help because of the blood pressure medicine. I'm like, guys, I don't need any of that stuff,
Well, I have a couple of questions, but we're running low on time. Do you have time if we go a little?
Yeah, I'm always good for that.
So the other thing that I wanted to ask you about is specifically about your mental health, because that's a hot topic for me. And so I know you mentioned that you had PTSD, and so how has this helped? I know I'm sure you do more than just diet to help that, but do you feel like the diet has helped your brain health as you've moved past or continue to process through that?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is feeding it cholesterol, which goes against the big agenda, right? So by feeding your brain, and like I said, I saw so many old people. We had to look for people with Alzheimer's, and I never realized the connection was the medication that was probably in their diets at the same time causing all this brain disease, diabetes 3, whatever they call it. So I know for me, what it did was not only did my energy levels change, I wasn't as depressed, probably because I wasn't as hungry. I was, satiated, and getting the proper food to feed my body and allow my body to heal. Like I had rashes like on my butt, from, playing sports sometimes. That stuff faded away. There was just all kinds of internal healing and different things that were going on. My sleep's still a little messed up. I don't know. It's just being a dad, that could be it. You never sleep the same, and a funny story I heard about, baby cries next to mom and dad. Mom always hears the baby. Dad sleeps through it. But if there's a noise outside the house, dad hears that. Mom sleeps through that. There's something that we're kind of biologically made. It was very fascinating to me. And, homeschooling and being around my kids a lot, we really dive into a lot of the, nurturing of animals and the packs and why it's effective. And, like that, ape empire, whatever that thing was fascinating. How we're still like them in so many ways. We love community. We love being around each other. And, and that's one of the biggest things about our little events, no matter where it is, whether it's in Texas, Tampa, or my event in Ithaca, New York, when you just get around all this positiveness, it's really, you get infected by it. And it's contagious, and it saved me, and being around positive people instead of the negative atmosphere all the time, it changes your life and you change your friends. It's all right. I still have old friends, but they still like doing the old things that got me sick. I can't do that. I got other responsibilities now.
Yeah, people, I have to tell my daughter this a lot. She's in her senior year of high school. She's just starting her senior year of high school. And over the course of middle and high school, the different people that have come and gone in her life, and I'm like, that will happen throughout your lifetime. People will be there when they're supposed to be there, and then they'll be gone, and the next group of people who are supposed to be there will be there. But you need to make sure you're surrounding yourself by the ones who are going to give you the most benefit. That continues through life, and that is an interesting aspect of this lifestyle, is that we find each other. Like, we are all just, first of all, we're just full of energy because we're eating this way. So we're full of energy and we have all this joy and life, and we want to find each other and meet each other and do these things. So this is leading me to, I would really like to talk more about your Cops and Campers, the nonprofit. I have this passion for advocacy, and I'm trying to get the word out there, help get the word out there anyway, that we all can do something
Right.
to advocate for this lifestyle. Because I think once we start eating in this way and we start healing and we start feeling better, we want to climb to the highest mountaintop and just start screaming it so that everybody else can hear it. But that comes out in different ways. And you've done it in this very specific way. So please tell me more about Cops and Campers.
Well, Cops and Campers was, I already went through the whole how it started, but what kind of happened was I did a documentary back in 2017. It was called Cops and Cabins. And they took 8 of us and we went up. This is when I was probably at my darkest moment. I was my heaviest. And we all went to a cabin, didn't know each other. A few of us did, but the point was they're retired cops. I was still on the job and we were just hanging out. And every day in the town, they had some high carb and bacon and egg breakfast. We would have the story of the day or a topic of the day. And we'd all have 8 different stories. It could be the worst day of your cop career. It could be the funniest. We'd have 8 hilarious stories or, one horrible story because no one else wanted to tell theirs, right? So just became the most therapeutic thing I'd been in my career, talking to these other guys that I didn't have to worry about getting back to my department. But we did a documentary, so I guess part of it could have, right? But at the time, one of the guys was a film guy, and we didn't know how far this was going to go. So anyways, it's only like a 19-minute documentary in Blue Ridge Mountains in Georgia, and it was awesome. One of the guys has his own podcast, John J. Wiley, and he helps all kinds of first responders. It's nice to see him growing, but that set the foundation because of how safe I felt, and then how therapeutic it was to be around those guys. And hearing their stories helped me, even though I wasn't, it just helped me, and then a year and a half later is when I found keto. So I was still, I was going through a lot then, but seeing that documentary, and I still use clips of those pictures from it because I can't believe how big I was, and how inflamed and sad my face looked and all this stuff. So that was the beginning. So when the flag incident happened, I go, I'm going to start something called like Cops and Campers now. Instead of doing the cabin, say we'll drive around the different campgrounds, and then one thing led to another, and then the same guy that did the Cops and Cabins documentary came out and did our documentary for Cops and Campers in 2022. That's on YouTube. It's about a 30-minute documentary. It goes in a little bit about the story of what happened, and it goes into these different cops that are meeting me, and they're like, wow, he's the first full-timer I ever met, which is a weird term. You're a full-timer, you're a full-time RV person, which is crazy now because we're the 5 years we've been living on the road in an RV, which is insane, right?
That's amazing. Yeah.
I know my kids are outgrowing the trail, so we're looking at land. That's a whole other story. But yeah, it just really was, it saved my life. 1 minute we could be, we saw 5 Great Lakes in 2021, swam in them, touched them. We got rocks from them. Talk about a history lesson. We went to Fort Niagara, and then all these different, all through Virginia. And it's just so much to see that I never thought about taking the time to do. And yeah, I left a lot of money on the table, but I bought my life back. And yeah, we're not going to live in South Florida anymore. I don't want to live in South Florida anymore. I can't afford it, and there's too much trauma down there for me. So we can live somewhere else, and we can homestead, and we can, start having some goats and eggs. And, my son, the one with Lyme, is very funny. If he eats chicken eggs that have eaten soy or corn, he instantly has a reaction. But if he eats a regular wild chicken's eggs, man, he's like our perfect little guinea pig. We're like, well, let's see if Mikey likes it.
Hey, Mikey.
But
that's funny.
Yeah, so the Cops and Campers thing has turned into therapy of the mind and of the belly now, and trying to get guys to eat right. And, we bring some good food options, and I try to get to the whole family, because whatever is hurting dad's hurting the kids. Eventually it's going to happen with the kids. You see it now. The obesity level of kids nowadays is off the chain,
Yeah. So
sad.
do you do like a campfire chat and
yeah, we usually have the first 2 nights of bonfire right around the campers, and we got about 25 people, and we don't even have to start conversation. It's not like I stand up and go, okay, everybody, let's all hold hands.
Here's the talking stick.
Dude, it gets off the rails fast with a bunch of first responders. So, it could be anything from like one of my years of the event was when Trump got shot. So that was a big thing going on, and this year it was, we just had July 4th, and, there's always something to talk about. And, what I found is the spouses or the significant others of us get together. They have their own satellite little groups, and you can hear like, yeah, Eric. I'm like, what? And it's something I did, and she's like, oh yeah, John was the same way. I'm like, oh no, they're telling war stories of how I lost my cool or something, or maybe my irritability. But that's therapeutic for them too, because she suffered she went through everything I went through in her own way. That happens. And I think this also helps the other guys realize their wives or their husbands or whatever have gone through it too, just in a different way. And it's good for them to be around other people. So overall, the kids get together, it's safe. You're not really worried about anything horrible happening. Not that it's, doesn't happen in campgrounds, but there's just a safety.
You are a bunch of first responders sitting around the campfire. So there is that.
Guns. Yeah, that's pretty crazy, which could be dangerous. But we're not fighting with each other. That's the good thing. But yeah, when you get around these circles, I mean, most police officers and even firemen, you come from a platoon or a shift. There's this group, this pack you come from. And when you retire and get out of it, it's really hard on a lot of guys. It's probably like empty nesters when they look at each other like, wow, it's just you and me now. Oh my God, But that's what happens. You get out of that job and you don't have those same connections. The department, they try to keep you involved, but you fade. So this is one of the ways guys get together. They go camping. They don't need me to camp. They meet up and make their own trips. Now they're going fishing together. Sometimes, I won't even go there. Sometimes there's all kinds of interesting people who meet in the camping world that you had no idea what's going on. So it's
I think that's a really interesting piece of it too, is that you've started these. How many have you had, or how many do you do them, like several a year?
I've had 9. I've had as much as 3 in a year, and it was a little bit too much.
Mm-hmm.
So the 2 is where I'm going. As I want to get one in Texas, and I got the guys over there at TMPA that want to do one. Texas, that's their FOP. And I just got to find the time of year. There ain't no storms, no football. No, I'm like,
I feel like we talked about that a long time ago. Maybe after a keto. I think, did you take your camper to KetoCon one year?
No, my buddy Greg, the RV carnivore.
Yeah, RV carnivore did. Maybe it was him, because he was trying to find a place to camp, and I was like, look, we have 2 tornado seasons in Texas. Just make sure you're aware of both of them, because you think it's only in the spring, but we have one in the fall too. So be aware of that.
I know. I was like, well, maybe we got to make it at like the Texas-Oklahoma game or something.
Yeah, just, watch the weather. You don't want to come during tornado season. And this year was really rainy, so that was a good year not to be here. But so you try to do 2 or 3 a year. And then what I was going to say that was very interesting is that the people that you are affecting in your events are then breaking off and kind of making their own events. And so maybe it's not camper related, but it's fishing related, or it's hiking related, or it's just a way to get together. And I love that it just keeps it's spreading. You started one thing and it's just spreading, and that's
it's like
amazing.
Our little meetups we have now popping up in our little world. You find out someone's in Memphis and you're in Memphis. Hey, you know what? Let's go grab a steak. You already got something to talk about. You don't have to argue over the menu. So it's it's really cool. I've done that a few times with different people I've met through social media, and I'm like, let's go grab breakfast, and it's really awesome. So anybody I think can do it, depending on where you're at. Whether you just, I don't know, anybody that starts asking me questions about it, I figure that's a date right there, right? There's a time that, hey, let's go to lunch. We get away from the YMCA, we get away from this, and we'll really talk about it. And you don't even have to sell it. I go, I'm not, that's the best part. I tell you, I'm not selling you anything. I'm just going to tell you about how I changed my life and how I got healthier and better. And it's right there. You can do it too, man.
I love that. I completely agree, which is why this exists, because somebody's story is going to touch somebody else. And
I've maintained 170 pounds for 6 years eating this way. It hasn't been, I went back off no, this lets me know that I should have been this since I was probably 18. This should have been my happy weight all my life. right?
It may have been a little more challenging to play football, but yes, it would have been your
Oh,
happy
that's
week.
another thing about concussions and injuries that still show up now, and that's part of so it's a lot that goes into it. But yeah, being this way overall, like falling off, like I slipped down the RV one day and rolled, I turned it into a roll, got up, but if I was 250 pounds, I mean,
I
it's
meant
been a
to do
little,
that.
yeah, yeah. And I looked around, no one saw it, of course. I would have said, give me the reel.
That's funny. And I mentioned football, but you know what? You're right. You are built for football. Unfortunately, we have created this culture where you have to be huge. And when I go to football games, I go to my daughter's high school. She's on the field for something. So I go to these football games and my heart breaks for some of these young men on the field. Their coaches are telling them, you need to eat pasta 4 times a day. You need
Oh,
to don't forget to drink this shake, and they're not fit. They're just big, and they're gonna have problems
and they
when they
get used
get
up
older.
because my
Hmm.
coach never checked up on me after high school. Hey, all right, can you slow the carbs down?
Yeah,
We got to
right.
start.
Yeah. You've now taken someone in a very impressionable age and taught them how to eat.
Or
And that's just not going to go away overnight. They're not going to wake up the day after they stop playing and say, "Oh, that was probably not okay. I should stop doing that." But it's going to continue. Hopefully people realize it before it's too late, but that doesn't appear to be happening as quickly as probably you and I hope.
yeah, well, we can only start. Like my two kids will be leaders in this field in the future, and they'll spread the word. And you can only, if we each spread a little bit, right? It's a big
Yeah,
movement.
absolutely.
Movement.
So your
So.
kids were little, right, when you started. So did they always know a keto carnivore
Yeah, my
lifestyle?
wife breastfed and was natural childbirth. So right from the get-go, the only thing she had to work on, she didn't understand really gluten was affected, because we did oats in the beginning with my first one, just for about 6 months. And then once she started looking into more organic stuff, and then we lived on a golf course at the time. So she called the golf course and goes, "What are you spraying?" And they're like, "Oh, every poison you can imagine." And the next thing you know, she's like, "We're moving." I'm like, "We're moving?" It's the only house I've ever had. I had it before her. And next thing you know, we're moving, and we changed locations because of the toxins that were going on the golf course. And then it just started making us look at my kids' diet, like reading the back of labels and like, well, we didn't keep it in the house. So the only time I could really cheat would be at work or something, and the booze. She couldn't really control the booze intake, and then I made little changes, pork rinds instead of Doritos but the kids, they eat real, like they drink a lot of raw milk, a lot of goat milk that we can find at local farms, raw cheeses, a lot of, the eggs, and as much, if I can get steak, I get it. But usually it's a lot of, the poor man's hamburger, or I get a roast and slice that bad boy up and beat it up, make my own ribeye. And, we make it work. Sometimes the chicken's not worth it. I look at it like, it's just not the same. It's too expensive, doesn't feel as nutritious, but we'll do a lot of salmon. We try to keep it. It's hard. She makes her own sourdough bread. That's one of the big things that at least we've cut down on having to buy anything that's filled with a whole bunch of different ingredients. But yeah, I call them ketovore kids. Probably in society's rules a little thin, if you look around compared to other kids, but they're strong. They're like little ninja warriors, man. Don't let them fool you. And they're the right size where they should be without anything else poisoning them. They want to eat, they eat. We have food. It's not, we just don't let them eat toxic food. We use simple meals. Like if we're going to go to a birthday party, we'll make our own cupcakes, our own cake, which is without frosting. It's just have to. So at least, they're involved, and now we don't care. We just go, yeah. The kids don't. They know not to eat that stuff.
Yeah, at
They,
some point they figure it out. That's a good thing.
and they can eat
One,
replacement stuff that's just as good.
yeah. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And it's horrible how our societal view of what healthy looks like has changed. And like healthy weight people have to try to fight back on that. And your children are like, no,
We
I'm
can't.
perfectly
we,
fine.
we
But
can't close, man, because it's like if the large is supposed to be a fat large. I'm like, no, he's probably a skinny large.
yeah, it's broad shoulders. That's it. There's nothing else going on. Right. I
He's
I
a
get it. That's the
typical
story of
V.
my life. I can never find anything that fits me. So totally understand. I never thought about that at the kid level though. But yeah, I guess it is that hard to find clothing
Well,
to
like
fit.
if it's a medium that fits them around the waist, then it's high waters.
Oh,
So it's always this little, but we make it work. I mean, it's not the worst thing in the world. It's just kind of funny when you notice it, because I've noticed my own change getting into, a size 32-inch waist, which is mind blowing from a 46, so you go and you're like, wow, so this is kind of where I should have been. It's actually nice to put on a nice shirt once in a while. I'm like, wow, I clean up all right, because I always felt like I got to stretch it out, or, it just didn't feel right. It was always that's what I regret, and what I'm loving I haven't done with my kids is that whole social conforming into, like, that pressure I've got to fit in, and what is everyone thinking about me, all those empty faces that you'll never know the rest of your life. They don't have to do that, my kids. They're not going to have this insecurities that I had as being a heavy kid, taking off my shirt around the cool other guy that had all the girls. I'm like, look at me, They're not that I want that life, but they're not going to have to worry about that insecurity, because they're just going to be happy kids, and they're going to know what they want. And that's going to be a reflection of their personalities. And I just hope they're not going to eat the crap. They're too smart for that.
well, the amazing thing is that they don't have all that inflammation that's clouded in their brain. So you're actually seeing their real personalities. You're actually seeing who they are. They actually know who they are, where a lot of us had to clean up our brains first and get the inflammation down to even figure that out and see it for the first time. So they are growing up knowing that. So I'm sure their confidence going forward, not like pompous or anything, but I'm sure they're going to have a certain confidence going forward in life because they're not clouded at all.
Yeah, I mean, we've been studying, like, I do the history, and we started I didn't know where to begin in history. I'm like, man, there's so much. How far back do you go? I just started at 0.
Yeah, it's like day 1.
I go 0, and my wife's family's all like Genghis Khan and, all that battling, and then my dad's side and all that, and my mom, they're all like Vikings and Spaniards, so it's just nothing but war. But it's interesting to them. I like the Vikings and I'll go over this stuff, and it's fascinating. You see the diets even back then. I mean, Genghis Khan was eating meat like crazy back there to keep his warriors freaking strong and fit, and they would surround these other villages and starve them out, man. And that's what they do.
They weren't eating Cheerios?
No,
they didn't wake up with a healthy bowl of Cheerios?
They didn't have Bill Gates to save them.
That's true. That's true. We do need people speaking for us because we can't speak for ourselves. So there is that.
So yeah, we do a lot of cool things, and my kids, like you said, they're going to be well informed, and they're going to have the knowledge, and hopefully they can use that energy that we wasted on so many useless things for better things. That's my goal.
Yeah. Well, it's been absolutely amazing talking to you, and I'm sure we could continue for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
But I do try to keep these to an hour. We've already gone over.
So sorry I teared up on your audience. That's the emotional side of me.
I have my box of tissues right behind me because I often am the one tearing up. So it's usually me. So thanks for doing that for me today.
No problem.
I do appreciate it.
It is the most therapeutic thing, by the way. In case anyone does do it, don't feel bad about it, because what are they going to do? It's your trauma. You got to experience it and let it out. And you know what? It comes in different parts too. So that's okay. That's part of the therapy.
And I think part of the therapy is feeling comfortable doing that in front of other people too. You're not hiding somewhere. You actually were being yourself in the moment at the time. And that's a
can I give one crazy plug?
Yeah, I was going to ask you to give your plug. So while you're giving one crazy plug, please tell everybody where they can find you.
Well, you can find me at Keto Five-O, obviously, pretty much everywhere, and then also Cops and Campers. But what I was going to say is, if you guys ever watch or want to watch a cool show, it's on Netflix. It's called Griselda. And my mom's actually, her character is the lead cop that takes down Sofia Vergara in the show. And my stepfather's also got a character on the show. So I'm the third best cop in my family. And you do see a little Eric in there in episode 2. She's taking me to baseball practice. So that's my only cameo as a kid in there. And it's pretty cool. It's a cartel drug dealing show. So don't watch it with your mother-in-law and your kids or something. Definitely.
Yeah. When
Adult.
I was telling my husband that I was talking to you, I was telling him all about that. I was like, have you heard of Griselda? He's like, yes. I was like, well, that's his mom. So, well, not Griselda, but the cop in there is his mom. And he was like, really? I was like, yeah. So pretty
Pretty wild.
exciting wildlife that, again, like I said, you can hear that story on other podcasts because you have openly talked about it, or definitely watched this Netflix show. But that you were just a kid while all of this was going on and
I know. Pretty
had
wild.
no idea, and still to this day hearing stories that you haven't heard that were happening while you were a kid. I mean, like, that's wild. It's really wild, I'm sure.
Yeah, sometimes I'm not gonna lie, I do hit the record button on my phone when we're sitting around at the dinner table because you can imagine the stories that are going around. I mean, I should be right. I'm trying to think, how do I put this into a book format, because
Yeah, I was gonna say you
my
need to write a book.
mom's story is amazing. You know,
Yeah.
what she went through in the 70s, and so she's made me who I am today. So
Breaking barriers,
absolutely.
and
So
all of that goes along with it. Well,
thank
before
you. Oh,
yeah, before we sign off, I always ask my guests the same question. So here it comes. It
uh,
is, what key insight could you share to help others write their keto biography?
what keto insight. Before after pictures, you got to start with something, because I'm telling you, you're gonna go back. You don't think you'll go back to it, but that helped me. And also joining a community. I think my first one was keto. I think I went to ketogenic.com, and then I found the ketogenic page through them, and I didn't know any other groups then. And looking and seeing those other people's experiences and what they went through began my, journey. And I can see it, 6 months, 9 months, and that's how you're going to keep track of your biography, and come up with a cool hashtag or a cool name online, man. It's fun. You get to share some cool reels and learn fascinating stuff about the human body. It's the physiology information that's coming out, especially on Instagram. They let half that stuff go through sometimes. It's amazing. And I'm like, wow, it's just so much. Everything from the water you're drinking to the air you're breathing. Not that you got to be
Everything.
scared, but it's just fascinating stuff that's out there that I should have been learning when I was my kid's age. So anyways, that's how you can find me, and that's it.
And I love that. In fact, just today on X, I posted a before and after picture, and somebody was like, "Oh, I should do that." And I was like, "Yes, absolutely. Even if you never share it with anyone, take that picture so you can go back and look at it. Because one day you're going to be feeling pretty down, and you're going to feel like nothing's working, and you're going to look at that picture and be absolutely amazed at what you see, and
And
not
what
believe your eyes."
one of the things I did when I quit drinking was there was a couple of people I'd see that was like, hey, it's day 30. And I was like, yeah, whatever, 30, But then I was paying attention though, because then here I was at 10, and then they're at 60 and I'm at 40, and I'm up on 2 years. So, there is something to that. Even if you put yourself out there and say, hey, I'm going to start today. Here's my first day. If you got the balls to do that, and you're going to get so much support and backing to help you. You're going to succeed.
Absolutely. This is just a very welcoming community.
Yeah.
All around. You're going to say you're going to do it, and we're all going to watch you stumble and fall, and then we're going to all be there to catch you and help stand you back up again, because we've all done it. We've all been there, and that's what this is all about. So I'm very pro community myself. So that I love that answer. I always ask that question. It's almost always a different answer, and I always love all of them. So, well, that concludes us. So thank you again for joining
Thank
us.
you.
It's been lovely having this conversation with you. And I think I told you, so if you're listening on real time, this drops on 9/11, which seems like just the appropriate day to drop a episode with a first responder. And so thank you for all that you've done for your community, for our community, for the community, because, you were talking about the health of first responders is important because it's such a stressful job. But it's not just for them, it's for us too. You called us the civilians, but that's who you're serving. And if we don't have healthy first responders, then all of us are at risk. And so I really appreciate everything that you're doing for that community, because it's impacting not just the people you care about, but it's impacting everyone at the same time. So wanted to make sure I shared my appreciation for that.
Well, thank
Anyway,
you.
on behalf of Eric Reynolds, I hope you enjoyed this Keto biography. Bye.